What are you expecting from your team the first few games?
Any predictions for this season?
Yeah, we're just going to take it one game at a time.
Es un honor estar aquí en Grandes Ligas.
We're going to have a good team. We're excited.
We're going to win this World Series and the next one.
Oh, y la próxima.
Supongo que nos veremos en octubre.
28 World Series championship sounds pretty nice, doesn't it?
How many were you a part of?
I remember winning my first ring.
I only got room for 9 more.
0.0 ERA.
Nice.
Sabes que no eres un superhéroe de verdad.
I'm going to hit 50 home runs this year.
I'm going to hit 60, 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75.
I'm going to hit 80 home runs. No, we can't do that.
Postseason.
Postemporada.
MVP, huh?
Dynasty.
I feel sorry for the baseball.
Mike, anything you want to say?
Just let the kids play.
Rose is 1 out of 15. He leads it off here in Game 5. And he hits a high drive into deep right. That was way back, and it is gone. He hits the first pitch for a home run. And the Reds lead very quickly, 1-0. Didn't take long, huh?
The Reds came out of the dugout about the same way yesterday, swinging at the first pitch. The first 3 hitters did it.
There are 2 kinds of people in this world. Those who love Old Bay and those who've never tried it. Because once you taste this Chesapeake Bay seasoning, you'll immediately be turned into a canvert. Old Bay goes great on seafood, chicken, corn on the cob, French fries, pretty much anything. Join the Legion of Canverts in America. Pick up a can today. And before you know it, this could be you. Old Bay, the can that connects us.
Having a little difficulty at the plate. Took some extra hitting practice. There she goes. Deep to right field. Could be out of here. 1-0 Cincinnati. That's his 3rd World Series home run. Joe Morgan. Looks like a low sinking fastball. That is Doyle Alexander's strength to pitch slow. But the Cincinnati Ball Club is a low fastball hitting club.
The next 2-2. Davis to left and will hit. Oh my! It's gone! Santa Maria!
From high atop the Robinson Gearing Studio Complex and straight out of God's country, Pawleys Island, South Carolina, the Let's Talk Baseball Podcast Network proudly presents Backwards K-Pod. And now, here's the host of the show, Jake Robinson.
Whenever moving slow-mo, welcome to my dojo. Those other parts are so-so. I'm chill like bro-yo, focus like a GoPro, ripping up this promo. Check out the scoreboard, freaks I'm throwing no-no. Going, yo, it's gone. Your heart just stopped, cause Jake got strong and mighty. Undefeated, I mean it. Pull up the box, pull it down, then breathe it. Written, produced, directed, and mixed. Dung on your lips and Ozzie Smith backflips. Pick a tip, any tip, get on to it. I got ridiculous pods without forcing it. You sit at home crying like a girl while I spread the gospel around the world. Yo, the pods are written behind tracks that mix it smooth with the groove to make ears wanna listen. Add a little cut and a rhythm to back it up. Another show to my name, now I should stack them up. You think another white rap back, but this ain't no act jack. My hobbies are rhyme, some people trying to be black with that. About time I come out, call the show. BKP, now let me turn it out, yo. Name take the state, 2771. Date, you know what time it is, I'm packing the guns. Your experience, I've been a witness to glory, and that's why I collect ball players and their stories. You heard? So, once again, back is the incredible, the pod animal, Jake the Snake Robinson from the Let's Talk Baseball Podcast Network. I'm coming out of Pawleys Island, South Carolina. Half man, half podcast machine. Back in the Captain Kirk chair, shields down, photons up. Prepare to engage on this week's digital audio program that I call Backwards K-Pod, where we collect ball players and their stories. What's cracking, nerds? What's juicy? Welcome back into the dojo this week for chapter 146 in our never-ending account and biographical collection of the moments, ball players, characters, stadiums, and pop culture references that have been woven and stitched into the DNA fabric of the beautiful tapestry we call baseball. I'm Jake Robinson. I got your hookup. Holler if you hear me. And I will never charge you freaks for the baseball content here at BKP. No Patreon, no Twitch, no play-to-play subscriptions. The best thing you can do to support my grassroots endeavors is to pound and follow that subscribe link. If you listen on a platform that allows you to rate and review, please do so as you see fit. I do what I do when I do it. No one does it better. And I ain't scared. So by all means, rate away. Support my proud sponsors and share with your seamhead buddies. And all these things enhance my profile in the Google search engines. And I'll just roll up my sleeves and put in the rest of the work to make this train roll. I am joined, as usual, with my trusty cohort of chaos in the dojo today, the fiendishly Polonius, Feline, Charlie Gunn's little gunner, sitting in the conductor's booth of our BKP time travel choo-choo, sipping on his catnip tea, ready to take us on this week's baseball adventure. And boy, oh boy, what an adventure we have. We got more ground to cover than Omar Vizquel playing shortstop out of Jacobs Field, as this week's focus will be on the long and storied history of baseball in the Queen City, Cincinnati, Ohio, which in many ways is the home of professional baseball in the context of the product that seaheads consume today. Now, before we get started, it's important to understand that I've covered a lot of Reds history here at BKP, including a bio on Crosley Field, which was the home of the Redlegs from 1912 to 1970. I also did an extensive deep dive into the exploits of the Big Red Machine, one of the greatest National League lineups ever, 1 through 8, and their baseball dominance of the mid-70s. I also did shows on the great Johnny Bench, as well as Tom Seaver, and all those shows are available in that banging-ass BKP archive that details around 250 years of baseball history. So there won't be a lot of emphasis on those eras of Reds history. If you want to learn about Crosley, Johnny Bench, and the Big Red Machine, by all means, dig into that banging-ass catalog of archive shows on whatever platform you listen to BKP, or at diamondsnakejake.podbean.com. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time in those eras, but there is still plenty of content as the history of professional baseball in Cincinnati. It reaches all the way back to 1858, 3 years before the beginning of the United States Civil War, and 11 years before the Reds, the first professional baseball team in history, is established. So, with that in mind, I want to get all the stragglers here on the Terrapin Station platform boarded up so we can begin this week's journey. If you can kiss and hug your loved ones goodbye, we can get this show on the road. As I look to the west of Terrapin, I can see down the left field line to home plate in our beautifully manicured jewel box crib, where our hometown BKP 9 have taken the field, as we got a full house today, waiting to root on our boys to victory. The pitcher has completed his warm-up tosses. The catcher has gone down to second. The infield has now thrown that seat around the diamond with a little snap and swagger. and they look ready to give their best effort, and blue is called play ball. And that's my cue, as usual, to give the final boarding call for our state-of-the-art BKP time travel choo-choo. I'm calling all aboard. As this week, I will have Gunner set our time and destination for February 1st, 1968, to the north bank of the Ohio River, Cincinnati, Ohio, in the east shadow of the John Roebling Suspension Bridge for the groundbreaking of Riverfront Stadium, a new stadium that would become home to the Cincinnati Reds and the Bengals of the National Football League. So, hurry, step right up, get in where you fit in. You can find yourself a private boxcar, post up in our expansive lounge, kick off your shoes, open your kimonos, ladies, rip off those bras, stuff them in your purse, let the sisters hang. You're amongst a family of seamen, and we don't judge. As Gunner picks up the necessary quantum speeds needed to hit 6.0 of RF on our spectrum analyzer, which creates these anomaly traversable wormholes, bending baseball space and time to our will, tipping the celestial scales, and enabling us to get back to February 1st, 1968, to witness the genesis of the cookie cutters Riverfront Stadium. As we make our trip to the shores of the mighty Ohio, let's talk about the rich history of baseball in the Queen City. A history that goes back to an omnibus ride, which was basically a horse-drawn carriage ride. And that's on July 23rd, 1858, when a group of men headed north out of downtown Cincinnati on what is now called Reading Road are on their way to a sporting event. They find themselves leaving the Cincinnati Riverfront Basin, where 50 livery stables, 7 blacksmiths, 120 bakeries, 750 grocers, and even more saloons, servicing a city population of 100,000 people crammed in a 2 by 1 mile area, which is the second most congested area in the young country outside of Manhattan. And the young men on the omnibus were bat and ball players, and they're headed for the first known baseball game in the Queen City on a playing field in East Walnut Hills. Their meeting turns the popular baseball narrative on its head, as the natives of the west side of Cincy have always held on to a belief that the beginning of the sports began on their side of the turf. But after much research, the professional game's genesis begins on the east side of Cincinnati. And the game is reported on by the Cincinnati Tribune on July 26, 1858 article, and it has the archaic beginnings of a box score attached to the story. It notes that the game of town ball was an exciting and spirited affair, but there is no score recorded in the article. But the article will prove to be a prequel for the formation of the 1869 Cincinnati Red Stockings, establishing the city as the first home of professional baseball. And this prequel would include a baseball diamond on the field for a former cricket field off of Madison Pike between Hackberry Streets and Woodburn Avenue. The neighborhood was a destination spot for pre-Civil War Underground Railroad for runaway black slaves from Southern oppression. The big participation sport in Cincinnati becomes cricket and town ball during the mid-19th century. Now, the town ball influences baseball, but it's not the same sport. The sport has been played in the city since the 1830s on fields that were square or rectangular in shape. It had 4 bases 60 feet apart 10 to 14 players make up a team. Outs are registered by catching a ball on the fly or soaking a runner, which means hitting them with the ball before they reach the base. That kind of reminds me of wiffle ball when I was a kid. The score occurs from players circling around the bases. It is ostensibly cricket in a distilled form, and its origins occurred with 4 Englishmen somewhere on the flattest ground saying goodbye by the Ohio River Basin. But baseball, as it was originally written with the space between the words base and ball, is formally played in Cincinnati on July 23rd, 1858. Unfortunately, the players in that first baseball game had been lost in the sands of times, as well as the records of the 3 subsequent games that followed, but the game was almost assuredly a collection of cricket and town ball players. The town ball players were likely led by Baum Tibet, a transplant from New Jersey where the baseball first started, Elysian Field, and he was looked up to as a star of the new sport that's becoming the rage in America, as it appears in the first box score in 1858. And he basically becomes the only town ball player known to have played baseball when it resumes after the Civil War. Now, Tibet, he was born March 30th, 1830, across the Delaware River from South Philly, and he arrives in the Queen City at the age of 11. He attends Woodward High School and college, and by 1858, he's married with 2 children living on the northwestern corner of 4th and Main, just blocks from the First Unitarian Church and Zion Baptist, 2 churches who were active participants in the freeing of slaves via the Underground Railroad. The impetus for this inaugural game was within the context of the newly codified laws of baseball pamphlet that were published and distributed in 1857 and 1858. And the rules dictate a 9-inning contest with 3 outs for every half inning, with 9 men on each team on a field with 90-foot dimensions between bases. And around this time, there was an announcement of an All-Star game being played in Brooklyn on July 13th, 1858. And that game was postponed due to rain. In an announcement reported as far as Charleston, South Carolina, and as far west as Davenport, Iowa. The game would be played on July 20th between New York and Brooklyn, with a paying crowd of 8,000 people watching the new sport. Cincinnati's first baseball players lived and ingratiated themselves into the staunch abolitionist communities, as many of the neighbors were running anti-slavery operations in an open secret. Town ball player Benjamin Buckley, 26-year-old Englishman, operated a feed store which was frequented by black abolitionists Kitty Dorham and Little Bucktown. Cricket Club President William Coolidge was good friends with Eliza Potter, who was jailed in Louisville for counseling a slave on how to escape to freedom by the Underground Railroad. And he was also befriended by former slave and abolitionist Peter Fawcett, who had originally been the property of one of the fathers of our nation, Thomas Jefferson, caring for the horses at Monticello. Less than a mile from the cricket grounds in Walnut Hills was the former home of Harriet Beecher Stowe, whose anti-slavery book, Uncle Tom's Cabin, would be published in 1852, and by 1857, the book had sold 2 million copies. After the first 4 games of baseball played in July and August of 1858, there was no record of a baseball game played in Cincinnati until the summer of 1866. In the fall of 1864, the Union Cricket Club, under the stewardship of George Ellard, hires New York cricketer Harry Wright to coach and captain the team in 1866. And the brand new grounds at the foot of Richmond Hill. And it would be Wright's final season of playing cricket. On September 2nd, 1866, the Union Club Cricket Club merges operations with the newly formed Cincinnati Baseball Club. Wright would pull off double duty while still under contract with the UCC until November of 1867, but he's allowed to play and manage the baseball club as well. The Buckeyes Baseball Club was also formed in the fall of 1866, and the before-mentioned Bob DeBeck is elected to the club's membership committee, and his name regularly appears in 1866 and 1867 box scores, playing many games against a lot of the future famous players of the first Cincinnati Red Stockings team. In fact, in the Red Stockings' first game, September 29th, 1866, at the Cricket Club's new fenced ball yard, DeBeck plays first base as the Buckeyes Baseball Club defeats the Red Stockings 20-18. And baseball doesn't really catch on in 1858, but upon the conclusion of the Civil War, the sport blows up in the Cincinnati city limits. On Sunday, April 7th, 1867, on a glorious, warm spring afternoon, 200 teenage boys descend upon the UCC Cricket Club's grounds to play baseball. And even though 12 people were arrested that day for violating the Sabbath, it was ostensibly the first opening day in the Queen City, a celebration of the new sport and a parade of sorts, as the game itself served as a Pied Piper for the community. Due to the surge in the sport's popularity, it becomes evident that bigger and better baseball fields will be needed, so the cricket and baseball clubs pool their revenues together and acquire new land west of Lincoln Park. The first game is played there on the 4th of July, 1867, on the field that they would name later Union Grounds, the same site where the Museum Center at the Union Terminal stands today. And the onset of baseball's popularity was no small step. The players were beginning to receive a small but growing degree of financial empowerment as the fans began experiencing a higher standard of play as the pros are beginning to sign to play the game. And the current Reds franchise lineage can be traced back to 1881, but its ancestry begins 4 years after the Civil War. The Red Stockings become baseball's first pro team in 1869, and it begins with a 45-9 drubbing of a team called the Great Western of Cincinnati. And they then proceed to win over 70 consecutive games before finally losing to the Brooklyn Athletics 8-7 in an extra innings affair that takes place in 1870. In 1876, the powerhouse Red Stockings become a charter member of the National League, and that's in 1876. However, the Red Stockings have a rocky start to their tenure, and they don't fare nearly as well as their 1869 predecessors, finishing their first Major League Stadium with a dismal 9-54 record. After 4 seasons as a charter member, the National League kicked Cincinnati out of the fraternity for playing games on Sunday, as well as selling beers during the games. In 1881, the Reds are reinitiated into the league in an exhibition series versus the St. Louis Ball Club from the American Association. And the American Association at this time is nicknamed the Beer and Whiskey League for its progressive and liberal approach to ballpark libations. The league is reviled by the more puritanical National League owners. And as the only American Association charter member pre-existing the young league, the Reds become the oldest baseball team, if not one of the oldest professional sports teams in the world. Now, I know there's the Edinburgh soccer club in Scotland is probably the oldest professional team, but the Reds are right up there. In 1890, the National League invites the Reds back into the fold, allowing the team to play on Sundays and to sell alcohol to the fans. And upon their return to the NL, the team has changed their name to the Reds. While the American Association in 1884, the Red Stockings opened League Park as the host of their home games. The Cincinnati team plays baseball for the next 86 years on the same hallowed ground. And I touched on this in the Crosley Field show. League Park has a tragic opening act as a grandstand collapse on opening day of 1894 kills one fan and injures many other. And a fire devastates the ball field in the new stadium that's built in 1902. And is coined the Palace of the Fans, but its life would be short-lived when another fire in 1911 reduces that stadium to ash, which leads to the construction of the ballpark originally known as Red Legs Field, but it would eventually be renamed Crosley Field after team's owner, Pal Crosley, in 1934. And they would play there until moving into Riverfront Stadium in 1970. For the next 30 years in the majors, the Reds' National League tenure was filled with mostly mediocre finishes, as they never finished higher than third place in the NL pennant race. Then comes the 1919 World Series, as the team is led by Red Slugger and Hall of Famer Ed Roush, who bats .320 and is probably the greatest Reds hitter in the franchise's history up to this point. The pitching staff is anchored by 20-game winners Slim Saley, as well as two 19-game winners in Dutch Ruther and Hod Eller. And the baseball world is flipped upside down when the Cincinnati Ball Club upsets the heavily favored Chicago White Sox in the 1919 World Series. And the shock from the series upset is offset by the anger and betrayal as team heads are becoming knowledgeable in the sordid facts surrounding the World Series when it becomes public that the Chicago team had 8 players accept money in a scheme to throw the series. While the 8 men are banned for life from the game of baseball in the aftermath of the fix, several players in the 1919 Reds team expressed their frustration with the perceived notion that the team had not earned their chip. And the Reds would disappear into mediocrity after that 1919 championship win, reappearing with quality pitching staffs in the 1930s. Pitchers Paul Derringer, Bucky Walters, and Johnny Vandermeer, who is best remembered for his back-to-back no-nos in 1938, teamed up with battery mate and catching great Ernie Lombardi to win back-to-back pennants in 1939 and 1940. In 1940, the Reds exercised the demons from 1919 to win the chip against the Tigers in the World Series. And for the next 2 decades after their championship win, in 1940, the only real noteworthy storyline for the club was their on-again, off-again status with the Reds nickname. With the Great Communist Scare sweeping the nation, the team changes their name from the Reds to the Redlegs to distance themselves from the communist boogeyman. But the team's fans and writers, they ain't feeling the Redlegs team name, and eventually the moniker falls by the wayside. The 1961 Reds are led by Frank Robinson's 37 home runs and 124 RBI, and Vada Pinson with his 208 hits and .343 average all the way to the World Series, where they would fall just short to the New York Yankees. 2 years later, the first cog for the Big Red Machine joins the club when a cocky crew-cut kid who grew up in Cincinnati rooting for his hometown Reds shows up at Crosley Field. Pete Rose is called up by the club, and within a decade, he develops into a catalyst leadoff stick for one of the National League's most dynamic dynasties. Managed by Hall of Famer Sparky Anderson, the Reds become a veritable gallery of Hall of Fame players with Rose, Johnny Bench, Tony Perez, and Joe Morgan leading the charge. The Reds went back-to-back World Series champions in 1975 and 1976, still the last NL team to achieve that feat. The machine rolls as they rack up 4 pennants, 6 division titles, with 4 Reds winning league MVPs during that span. In 1976, the Reds exhibit their vulgar display of offense as the Big Red Machine leads the National League in 12 offensive team categories. Now, Pete Rose's departure for Filthy after the 1978 season, it signals the end of the beginning of the end of the Big Red Machine era, as the newfound free agency monetary system in baseball going into the 1980s left the small market Reds on the outside looking in, and the machine is broken down on the side of the road, and soon the Reds begin selling off her spare parts. Rose will return home in 1984. He passes Ty Cobb hits record of 4,191 hits with a single on Padres pitcher Eric Schau on September 11, 1985 at Riverfront Stadium. The goodwill of Rose's hometown career was interrupted when it was determined that Pete Rose had been placing bets on baseball games from the Reds dugout. And Rose would comply with Commissioner Bart Giamatti's lifetime ban from the game that's still in effect to this day. Lou Piniella would take the helm of Red Skipper, and he guides the team to the NL West Pen in 1990, led by the powerful number of Eric Davis, Chris Sobo, Paul O'Neill, and future Hall of Famer Barry Larkin. And the team features a powerful bully nicknamed the Nasty Boys, comprised of Ron Dibble, Norm Charlton, and Randy Myers. They would cap off their season with a World Series upset of the powerful Oakland A's in October of 1990. And since 1990, the Reds team has floundered for the most part. They did finish first in a strike-short 1994 season. They won the NL Central Division crown in 1995. They missed the postseason by 1 game in 1999. And they opened the retro ballpark, the Great American Ballpark, in 2003. They would go on to win the NL Central Division crown in 2010 before being eliminated in the first round of the playoffs. And 2012, they win another division title by losing the first round of the post. And in 2013, they suffer a wild card loss. And that was followed by 6 seasons of missing the post before 2020, led by NL Cy Young winner Trevor Bauer. The Reds would return to the post, but fall the Atlanta Braves in the wild card. And regardless of whatever the Reds add to their 5 world championships, 9 pennants, and 10 divisional titles, they will always have a strong, proud baseball lineage. One that harkens back to the beginning of baseball time in their role as the keeper of the historic pioneering flame that they lit shortly after the end of the American Civil War. And here we are, nerds, as Gunnar has us racing out of that last reversible wormhole to February 1st, 1969 for the groundbreaking ceremony on the north bank of the Ohio River for Riverfront Stadium, which would house the Reds and the NFL Bengals in the Queen City. After calling the cozy confines of Crosley Field home for 58 years, the Reds decide to jump ship due to its antiquated amenities, a changing neighborhood, and an inadequate parking at the Old Lady. The new Riverfront Stadium is to be designed by the architectural firm of Heary Alexander Rothschild Associates Architects. As the new facility will sit in a 48-acre footprint, it's projected to need 10,000 tons of steel, 13,000 tons of refurbished steel, and about 175,000 cubic yards of concrete to complete the project. When the construction is completed, the crib will have 4 levels of concourses, 35 concession stands, 50 restrooms. The diameter of the stadium was 700 feet, or 213.36 meters, encompassing an 8.5 acre of land, and it will be built around a playing surface of 120,000 square feet of AstroTurf. Within a year of the groundbreaking ceremony, the stadium has grown vertically to include roof girders, with the first seats popping up and walkways over Fort Washington Way, leading to completed parking decks. On January 8, 1969, the city and Hamilton County Legislative Branch announced that Riverfront Stadium will be the name for this new structure. The momentum of the build is stalled on February 4th, 1969, when city employees go on strike and begin picketing the work site. Union members working the grounds honor the strike, and they refuse to cross the picket lines. Eventually, the impasse is resolved and construction resumes, but there are now concerns about Riverfront being ready by the June 30th target date. Cincinnati Mayor Eugene Ruhlman announces that the Reds may have to wait until July 4th to play some rehearsal games in anticipation of the MLB All-Star Game slated to take place in the new crib on July 14th before returning to Crosley Field until August 11th. Now, another potential delay in the project occurs when the Truckers Union goes on strike, which left parts of the new scoreboard sitting in Chicago. Despite the obstacles, construction proceeds, and on May 12th, the AP releases the photos that show outline areas for the mound and the bases, and the location of the fences are marked. 2 weeks later, workers can be seen furiously working on installing escalators and cleaning the site, where movable seats would be erected in the baseball configuration. Workers begin laying the rubber base for the artificial turf, as the crew estimates at this time that they need 25 more days to finish the project, 20 if there's no rain. Sports Illustrated in the May 1970 edition reminds readers that Atlanta had volunteered to be a backup option if Cincinnati falls short in their aspirations. And it looks like that will be the path to be taken by MLB, as June 1st was getting closer and closer. And that was the date when contracts between several building trade unions representing over 12,500 workers were set to expire. Team president Francis Dale is getting antsy, opining that it would be a disaster if the union and workers can't come together. The two sides reach a tentative agreement on May 27th, and it's full steam ahead with the pressure of a June 30th commitment. And for many, Riverfront Stadium was just another cookie cutter, a multi-purpose monstrosity that popped up on the sporting landscape of the 60s and 70s. But for the fans of Cincinnati, it was a place to watch those dominant red teams during the summer months of the 70s. And there was safety and security as Riverfront was a home to some of the greatest players in baseball history. As early as 1940, discussions for a new park for the Reds began to circulate in the city, but the talks did not intensify until the 1960s when team owner Bill DeWitt signals his desire to build a park in the Blue Ash area of Cincinnati. And he wants a dome stadium, but city officials veto his desires, instead opting to build a multi-purpose crib along the Riverfront Basin. There were some veiled threats by DeWitt and team officials that the team is encountering tempting overtures from the city of San Diego. But in 1966, he sells ownership of the Reds to a local group of investors who have no desire in ripping the oldest baseball team on the planet out of Cincinnati. In 1968, the Cincinnati Bengals officially become an AFL football team, and now the city has a sense of urgency to build a multi-purpose crib to house the two pro teams. After 2 years of construction, the Reds play their inaugural game at Riverfront Stadium on June 30th, 1970, as the Reds fall to the Atlanta Braves 8-2 after Hank Aaron hits his first home run, the first home run in the stadium's history, knocking in the first 2 RBIs of the new crib. Riverfront was similar to every cookie cutter of the day. It was massive, and it has a seating capacity of 52,952 fans for baseball and almost 60,000 for football. The lower seats in the bowl, they're painted blue. They stretch from the left field foul pole around home plate before shooting to the right field pole. The 3 other levels saw their seats painted green, yellow, and red, and they circled the field. The 3-level parking garage accommodates 2,500 cars, encasing the stadium with entry gates to the 2nd level. And if you sat in the blue bowl, fans had to walk down the ramp to get to their desired level. The stadium, or the scoreboard, was located above the center field seats in the upper deck. And in order for the stadium's conversion to a football crib, the lower block seats from home to plate to left field were moved on wheels to outline the football gridiron. And very few changes occur at Riverfront for its first 25 years of service. In 1996, the stadium naming rights were sold to Synergy Corporation, changing the name to Synergy Field. Around this time, the stadium is renamed in the crib with a corporate sponsor. Both the Reds and the Bengals are seeking new separate cribs. The Bengals move out of Riverfront in 2000 into Paul Brown Stadium. In 1998, the Reds announced that a new ballpark is to be built next to Synergy Field. And in order for the construction to begin, 14,000 seats in the outfield are removed for the 2000 season. The bullpens were relocated behind the right field fence with the removal of the 14,000 seats. And the Bengals playing in their new crib, the Reds rip out the AstroTurf and install a natural grass playing surface. And for 2 seasons, Synergy Field looks like an actual ballpark. During the 2000 and 2001 seasons, the Reds fans no longer had to stare at empty seats beyond the outfield wall. Instead, they have a bird's eye view of the Ohio River, along with the progression of the new stadium that's to be called the Great American Ballpark. The team plays their final home game in the stadium on September 22nd, 2002, and it's demolished on December 29th, 2002. It has seen many of baseball's greatest moments in its history, including hosting the 1970, 72, 75, 76, and 1990 World Series. It hosted the All-Star Game in 1970 and 1988. And the 70 game is Rose most remembered for the home plate collision between home field kid Pete Rose and Indians catcher Ray Posse. Hank Aaron, who hit the first home run in the Builders' history, also hit home run number 714, and Riverfront timed the vaulted home run record held by Babe Ruth. It saw Johnny Bench's MVP season of 1970 and 72, as well as Joe Morgan winning hardware in 1975 and 1976. And it was the backdrop when Pete Rose breaks Ty Cobb's hit record of 4,191 on September 11, 1985. The address of the stadium was 201 East Pete Rose Way, and you could set your drones for 39 degrees 5 feet 48 inches north by 84 degrees 30 inches 30 feet west, and let that bad boy hover over the ghost of Riverfront. It was built at a cost of $45 million in 1970, which is about $353 million in the 2024 economy. The first hit in Riverfront came off the bat of Felix Milan. Richard Milhouse Nixon becomes the first president to visit the park on July 14, 1970. The first upper deck home run in the Carib came from the big doggy Tony Perez on August 11th, 1970. It was the site of the first World Series played on artificial turf, October 10th, 1970, between the Reds and the Orioles. Cubs pitcher Kenny Holtzman throws the first no-hitter in the stadium's history. On July 23rd, 1971, Phillies pitcher Rick Wise becomes the first pitcher to toss a no-hitter and add 2 home runs with his bat as he stymies the Reds 4-0. It was the first stadium to display metric distances on their outfield wall. Reds pitcher Tom Browning throws the first perfect game in the stadium's history versus the Dodgers on September 16, 1988. And umpire John McSherry collapses and dies on opening day, April 1st, 1996. May 5th, 2000, card slugger Mark McGwire hits the longest ball ever hit at Riverfront, a 473-foot blast off a southpaw hurler, Ronnie Balone. From home plate to left field, the foul pole, left field and right field foul poles, they ran 330 feet or 100 meters. The left center field and right center field power alleys were 375 feet in distance or 114 meters. And center field was a poke, 404 feet to 123 meters. And those are the dimensions from 1970 to 2000. And preparation for the exodus to the Great American Ballpark, the dimensions in 2000 changed and were scaled down. Left field and right field went from 330 feet to 325 feet or 99 meters. The power alleys of left center field and right center field, they dropped to 370 feet, and left or 110 meters, and the right center field power alley drops to 373 feet, 114 meters, and center field goes from 404 feet to 393 or 120 meters. And I tell you what, Breeze, with the history of the Reds and the history of Riverfront Stadium completed, I'm going to take a break as we head on over to the current home of the Cincinnati Reds, the Great American Ballpark, a baseball cathedral that lies on the winding banks of the Ohio River. And we've covered a lot of ground, so let me break out Reward Gunner with the treats for first segment ode. And when I get back, I'll finish out this week's introspective dive into the baseball history of Cincinnati with a profile breakdown and the history and construction of their current home. You're listening to Backwards Game Pod and the Let's Talk Baseball Podcast Web Network. Thank you for joining us with me this week as I'm going to step out, hydrate, rip a few tubes. I'll be our BC Meds. Don't go anywhere. Meet me on the dark side of the moon.
gives into most. So lay down, the pain is real.
Today, I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth.
Jackie Robinson searching home run into the left field stand. Here comes Roger Maris. There's a new home run champion of all time. I don't believe what I just saw.
Cal Ripken Jr. has reached the unreachable star.
This crowd on its feet and in unison.
This one has a chance. Home run! Mike Piazza! The Boston Red Sox are world champions.
Welcome to the first night of MLB Network.
Number 600 for Jim Thome. That ball is gone.
106. That would be a new record.
It is gone. Oh, what a catch by Mike Trout. The Cubs have finally won it all. The Atlanta Braves are world champions.
He's got to face Ellie De La Cruz, who appeared to be consciously pitched around at times in his major league debut. Doubled, walked twice yesterday. But in his later plate appearances, it would go from loud chants of Ellie to tennis match, golf tournament silence.
Anticipation to see what...
Oh, goodness! That ball had a family! In game 2, his first home run. A 2-run bomb.
John, that wasn't just a home run. That ball almost exited the ballpark. And to crown that Viking from the DR.
Lark Statcast projected that ball to go nearly 460 feet.
I mean, look at this right here. Oh, my goodness. That ball is destroyed.
The hardest hit ball by a Red this year. That was nearly 115. It brought everyone to their feet.
My goodness.
Howdy, y'all. This is Big Tex Gage Gein, executive producer of Backwards K Pod. In Texas, we do everything big. After football and golf, there's probably nothing I love more than going fishing and enjoying a good crawfish boil. The only thing I dislike about going fishing is the lingering odor it can leave on your hands afterwards. Well, the Fish and Hand Cleaner is an all-natural liquid soap perfect for overpowering fish and bait odors from your hands. I can't tell you how many times I've eaten steamed crabs, lobster, shrimp, crawfish, and then washed my hands with regular soap, only to touch my eyes half hour later, and my face begins to melt off due to the damn Cajun Old Bay spices. Well, we also have a hand cleaner specifically formulated to use after eating shellfish and other seafoods. Perfect for cleaning spicy, smelly hands after a Texas-sized seafood feast. In these cases, don't settle for anything less than our crawfish hand cleaner, our crab hand cleaner, or the fish and hand cleaner. An ingenious trifecta of natural hand soaps developed and owned by a disabled Navy veteran. He and Jake have a true connection, as they were boot camp shipmates all the way back in 1989. So he is family, folks, and one thing we do here at the Let's Talk Baseball Podcast Network is look out for family. So you can support two grassroots companies by two former shipmate Navy vets. Crushing big bowls of shellfish or fishing on the banks of your favorite river while you listen to BKP. Sounds like a great day. You know, in fact, hey Ma, where are my poles? I'm gone fishing. There's also a buffalo wing hand cleaner in development as we speak. To check all of the incredible products of this great company, you can go to www.crawfishhandcleaner.com or call the home offices at 713-588-0290. That's 713-588-0290 to support the grassroots company that supports your Grassroots podcast show. That's crawfishhandcleaner.com or 713-588-0290 to prepare for your summertime shellfish feast or that fishing trip you're planning. crawfishhandcleaner.com.
John, thank you very much. Joey, we don't know what the future holds, but we know the possibilities. What are your emotions right now?
You're being very dramatic right now.
That's what I do. It's part of the gig.
It was a good win today. Well, thank you, everyone, for the support. I'm speechless. I don't expect that sort of thing, and for you to stop me in my tracks, stop the game, it means a great deal to me. So thank you. You almost had me crying. I almost cried, there's no crying in baseball. And, no, it truly, I'm speechless, and it meant so much. That moment was really special to me. It's a good win, good team win today. That's what we're here for, to give you that. We're going to fight all the way to the very end of the season. This team is tenacious. I can't tell you how badly this team wants to play for you all. They love it here. They love representing this city, and I've been able to do it for 17 years. What a tremendous honor so far. And 5 more games to go. We're going to try to give it to you. So stay with us. We'll fight to the very end. So thank you so much. Thank you.
I've been to your town and nobody around. I've been to your city and your city like Cincinnati.
Welcome back, freaks, to Backwards K-Pod in the Let's Talk Baseball Podcast Network, where we collect ball players and their stories. And this week, we have focused on the strong baseball tradition and history of baseball in the Queen City of Cincinnati, Ohio. A history that can be traced back to 3 years before the start of the U.S. Civil War. And the early history of the game coincided with the delicate balancing of politics and sports, as Cincinnati was the final landing spot for many runaway slaves relying on the Underground Railroad to escape Deep South oppression. And I would be remiss if I didn't at least touch on the history of Negro League baseball in the abolitionist-friendly city. Black baseball goes back to the 1860s, with ball clubs being established throughout the country. In 1887, a gentleman's accord is struck, making sure that the sport is kept segregated. And it was an unwritten rule. It didn't need to be written. It was just accepted among the major league ball clubs. And Cincinnati ball player Charlie Grant nearly breaks the color line in 1901. Baltimore Orioles manager, the crafty John McGraw, travels to Hot Springs, Arkansas to recruit players for his team. He watches Grant play, and he concocts a scheme to pass Grant off as a full-blooded Cherokee named Charlie Tokahama, as a way to sidestep the gentleman's agreement and put Grant on the Orioles roster. But the plan would unravel when his nemesis, Charles Comiskey, the owner of the White Sox, recognizes Charlie Grant as a player in the Negro League, and he outs He outs Greg and McGraw in public before Grant has a chance to play a game in the majors. He tells the Cincinnati Enquirer that McGraw's Cherokee player is actually a crack Negro second baseman named Charlie Grant, warning the baseball consumers and the writers that no matter how much McGraw tries to fool the public, dressing Grant up in war paint and feathers, don't be fooled by his fraudulent claims. Grant would go on to play for the Cuban ex-Giants, the Philadelphia Giants, and the Cincinnati Stars in the Negro Leagues. But the scheme unravels before he gets a shot in the majors. Reds manager Frank Bancroft made his first forays into the alternative leagues in 1865. He schedules his Reds team against the Page-Fence Giants, an all-black barnstorming tour team from Adrian, Michigan. The Reds will win both games 11-7 and 16-2. Bancroft also takes the Reds to barnstorm the island of Cuba in 1897, becoming the first professional team to play baseball in Cuba. Jose Mendez pitches 25 consecutive scoreless innings against the Reds in November of 1988, 1908, including a one-hitter. The legendary Cuban pitcher becomes a legend on the island, and he travels to the States to play for the Kansas City Monarchs Negro League team. And in 2006, he's elected into the National Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, New York. 2 lighter-skinned Cubans were signed by the Reds in 1911, Armando Marsans and Rafael Almeida, as the league allowed light-skinned Latinos to join the MLB fraternity back in those days. Both Cuban imports played on the Cuban team based in the Negro Leagues in 1905. Almeida would play for the Reds until 1913, and Marsans would play for the Reds, St. Louis Browns, and the Yankees through 1918. The League of Colored Baseball Clubs is formed in 1886 with a team based in Cincinnati called the Browns, but the league collapses within a week. Black baseball pioneer Bud Fowler leads the Cincinnati Black Tours on a barnstorming tour of 1905. For the 1921 season, the Cuban Stars of the Negro National League began leasing out Crosley Field, and in one of those games, John Beckwith for the Chicago Giants hits the first home run over the Crosley Field outfield wall in the 9-year history of the park. The Negro American League is established in 1937 and briefly had 3 teams to represent the Queen City. The Cincinnati Tigers in 1937, the Buckeyes Baseball Club in 1942, splitting their home games at Crosley Field and in Cleveland, and the Cincinnati Clowns, who would move to Indianapolis and keep the Clowns nickname. The Cincinnati Crescents, an all-black barnstorming team founded by the Harlem Globetrotters owner Abe Saperstein, begins touring in 1946, and their offense is powered by the bats of Lucius Luke Easter, who would later go on to play for the Tribe. The best black athletes in Cincinnati were represented by the Tigers, who were organized as an independent team by DeHart Hubble in 1934. And Hubble was an impressive athlete himself, becoming the first African American to win an Olympic gold medal in the long jump in the 1924 Paris Summer Olympics. He had an eye for talent, and is a leader of a top-notch squad called the Excelsiors. And the core of that team would become the Tigers. They were funded by businessman Henry Ferguson, who published the Cincinnati black newspaper of the day called The Mirror. The Tigers joined the Negro Leagues in 1937, with Negro Leagues icon Double Duty Radcliffe serving as the manager. After just one season, the team is sold and becomes the Memphis Red Sox. Jackie Robinson breaks the cover line and slowly begins to integrate baseball. Chuck Harmon becomes the first black ball player to play for the Reds in 1954, and the Negro American League begins its fade into obscurity. And here we are, Freaks, standing at 100 Joe Nuxle Way outside the amazing baseball cathedral christened as the Great American Ballpark. You can set your drones by 39 degrees, 5 feet 51 inches west, by 84 degrees, 30 feet 24 inches west, and let her hover. Get yourself some picturesque shots of this modern-day cathedral. It currently sells out at 43,501 fans as their 2003 NLDS Game 3 packed the crib with 44,599 die-hard Reds fans for the most ever attending a game in the building's history. And that was to watch Randy Wolf and the Philadelphia Phillies beat Cincinnati. Baseball has been played now along the banks of the majestic Ohio River for more than a half century, as Riverfront Stadium is opened in 1970, and the Great American Ballpark has been home to the Reds since 2003. The ballpark's construction had helped revitalize the area along the river and has become a centerpiece of downtown Cincinnati. And prior to its construction, the area along the river was originally the site of Riverfront Stadium and massive parking lots. As we highlighted in the first segment, Riverfront was a circular cookie-cutter, multi-purpose stadium that housed the Reds and the Bengals. In the 1990s, practically every team in the game is salivating for an Orioles Park at Camden Yards crib, a single-use stadium that features close-to-the-action seating, additional luxury boxes, and all the local amenities being offered to the fans by these updated yards. So, in 1996, Hamilton County voters, they approve a bond that would increase the state sales tax to generate the necessary funds needed to pay for the project, as well as the Bengals' new crib. 2 locations for the ballpark are proposed: Broadway Commons and a plot of land between Riverfront Stadium and U.S. Bank Arena, affectionately referred to as the Wedge by the locals. Reds officials were alarmed by the price tag on the land at the Broadway Commons site, whereas the land by the river is owned by Hamilton County. So in November of 1996, the citizens of Cincinnati voted in favor of constructing the yard along the banks of the river. The Reds and the county agree on a lease agreement that stipulates that the Reds owe $2.5 million to Hamilton County for the first 9 years of the agreement, and they would owe $1 annually for 10 years to 2035. Groundbreaking for the Great American Ballpark, it happens in a public ceremony on October 4, 2000. And in order for the construction to begin at the new yard at its current site, Riverfront Stadium would have to be partially demolished. And as I told you before, Riverfront removes 14,000 seats from the outfield as Red fans attending baseball games in the cookie cutter were treated to watch the construction of the new ballpark beyond the outfield fence. Great American Insurance Company buys the naming rights to the new crib, a 30-year commitment with an annuity value of $75 million. The park is a combination of new and retro, providing an excellent setting for baseball. As fans walk along the outer perimeter of the structure, down the 2nd Street, they are greeted by a 3-story building of brick and cast limestone with the phrase, "Rounding third and headed for home," a nod to Joe Nuxle's signature sign-off called "Sprawled on Top of the Building." At the intersection of 2nd and Main Street is an opening to the Crossley Terrace, which is the home plate entrance that the majority of fans use when entering the ballpark. The terrace is about an acre of concrete bounded by trees and grass, and statues of Crossley Field immortals dot the landscape as statues of Joe Nuxle, Ernie Lombardi, Ted Kluszewski, Joe Morgan, Johnny Bench, and Frank Robinson are a constant reminder to the fans about the rich history of Reds baseball. The grass in the terrace is sloped to the same incline the Crossley Field outfield featured, and adjacent and connecting to the Great American Ballpark along Main Street is a Reds Hall of Fame museum and a team store. A rose garden honoring Pete Rose is located near the museum and the general area where his record-breaking 4,192 hits landed at Old Riverfront. Upon entering the park, prepare to have your breath taken away as you get a sweeping view of the structure and its background. The lower grandstand extends to both foul poles and around home plate. The second deck consists of luxury boxes and club seats, as well as the press box area. And there's a distinguishable gap in the seating area between home plate and third base. And this is to enable the people in downtown Cincinnati to see through the ballpark. It also allows the upper deck of the Great American Ballpark to be closer to the action than the average upper decks of Major League Baseball. Double-deck bleachers are located in left field, and additional seating is located beyond the right field wall. With very limited foul ground in the yard, the fans are greeted with an intimate experience and breathtaking views of the game. Above the bleachers in left field sits a massive scoreboard. The clock perched high atop the scoreboard is a replica of the Longin's analog clock that sat at Crossley Field. The ballparks are located beyond the outfield. The bullpens are located beyond the outfield walls. And the Reds in left center field, the visitors' bully sits behind the wall near the right field foul pole. A pub known as the Machine Room Grill is located near the left field corner, and it gives fans a place to relax and catch the game's action with friends. The bar features tons of memorabilia from the Big Red Machine area. The other clubs and dining options include the Championship Club, the Handlebar Riverfront Club, and the Diamond Club. Located between the batter's eye and the stands in right field is 64-foot high by 36-foot wide, two large smokestacks, a paddle wheel accompanying a large misting system that shoots fireworks and creates mist. After the 2006 season, the Reds constructed a two-story riverboat deck on top of the existing batter's eye, and it's used as a party area. The 7,500 square foot deck holds about 150 fans. The newest addition to the park is the right field scoreboard, which was added prior to the 2015 All-Star Game, which was hosted by the Great American Ballpark. The scoreboard is 90 foot wide by 30 foot high. It's LED, high def, and it sits above the sun deck seats. Like most retro throwback cribs of the modern era, the field is asymmetrical in its dimensions, and the playing surface is matted in a lush Kentucky bluegrass. From home plate to left field, foul pole, the distance is 328 feet, which is 100 meters. From the dish to left center field, power alley, it measures 375 feet or 116 meters. Straightaway center field stands at 4 feet, which is equivalent to 123 meters. The right center field power alley is shorter than the left center field power alley by 9 foot. It stands at 370 feet or 110 meters. And right field to the pole is 325 feet or 99 meters from the dish. The park is completed at a cost of $283 million by the HOK architecture firm, and it's ready for opening day of the 2003 season on March 31st. 42,343 Reds fans crashed the turnstiles to watch Chris Benson and the Pittsburgh Pirates beat Jimmy Haynes and the Reds 10-1. Ken Griffey Jr.'s first inning double was the first hit recorded in the new crib. Pirate Slugger. I'm sorry, I missed a name here. It launches the first home run. Austin Kearns will become the first redleg to drop dog at the new park. And former President George Herbert Walker Bush threw out the first ceremonial pitch in that 2003 opener. On July 21st, 2003, Russell Brandon hits the first grand salami in the park's history. And Drew Stubbs hits the first inside the park home run on June 17th, 2011 in a game versus the Toronto Blue Jays. Adam Dunn is credited with hitting the longest ball in the Young Park's history, a clout so tremendous it landed in a different state. A 535-foot shot, 163 meters off the plate, Jose Lima of the Dodgers, with the ball landing in the Ohio River, which technically is considered a part of Kentucky. 2 no-nos have been fired at the Great American Ballpark. The first one coming from Homer Bailey against the San Francisco Giants when he beats them 3-0 on July 2nd, 2013. And the second one was thrown by Cubs pitcher Jake Arrieta as the Cubs trounced the Reds 16-0, making it the most lopsided no-hitter in the modern game since Pud Galvin of the Buffalo Bison stymies the Detroit Wolverines 18-0 on August 4th, 1884. And folks, I think that's where I'm going to call it this week. Thank you for joining me and sharing the history of baseball in Cincinnati. I hope you enjoyed learning about the long, rich history and tradition of baseball in the Queen City. And I'll be up bright and early in the morning, hitting that cage, trying to improve. And I promise, freaks, I'll try to be better next week. With the history of baseball in the Queen City in the books, I put a big, beautiful backwards K next to it in the scorebook. I'm going to fold it up nicely, add it to our always expanding collection of ball players and their stories. So, let's load up our BKP time travel steam diesel, and I'll have Gunner return you guys to your loved ones, patiently awaiting your return to Terrapin Station. And Gunner has us racing up the tracks to get us back home. I now turn my attention to our never say die baseball hydra. I reach under my kimono, I grab my katana blade, and I chop the head off that beast, only to see 2 more baseball topics appear in their place. Next week, I'm going to do a deep dive into the Kosain High School baseball tournament played in Japan. Every summer and spring, the country shuts down to follow the action and results of these prestigious tournaments that's every bit as big as March Madness and the Super Bowl in the American context. When up-and-coming Japanese players prioritize their baseball careers, they all dream of becoming a nationwide name on the Kosain states. But looky, y'all know the deal, right? That's another story for another pod here at Backwards K-Pod, where we collect ball players and their stories. I'm going to keep coming through every week with that pre-baseball smoke.
You don't want that smoke.
And I'm going to keep it consistent like Big Papi, David Ortiz. Thank y'all for coming out. God bless and win the day. And like my brother Jay Hillenbrand told me in our one-on-one sparring session in the dojo a few years back, you go to hell, Andy Pettit. Parents, if you see your kid, they got their noses in the phone, they're looking bored and unproductive AF, by all means, grab a couple gloves and a ball and play a game of catch with those munchkins. Me and my cohort of chaos, Charlie Guns, we throwing up our Gunnar Hendersons, y'all. That's our number 2s. As in peace. The Koshain High School Japanese baseball tournament next week, freaks. I can't wait to climb that mountain again and preach the gospel before this congregation. I love you guys. See ya.